Hello. Welcome to Producing in an Age of Pandemic and the Age of Pandemic session. This is which session is this? Is our 11th session or our 10th session? 10th. Session number 10. I was just sharing with my colleagues who have just consented to this session being recorded so we can share it with folks later. I set up the Zoom account so that anyone who joins us later in the meeting, a little consent button will go on and then they will say, yes, I consent to being recorded. We love consent here. As a change of pace, I'm actually starting us off at 10 o'clock on the dot. In our previous sessions, we had been starting at 10:05 to kind of give a human entry time, a chance for people to get in, but we realized we already start the session early. We already open it up 20 minutes early. So if anyone in the future wants to join early to test their connectivity, ask any questions about what's it going to be like, we always open this up about 15 minutes early. But in the future, we're going to try to start on time. We also wanted to acknowledge that today is in the United States. I don't know if this is nationally true for Canada, but today in the United States is Memorial Day. We had a conversation, asked ourselves, should we keep this meeting or should we honor a day off? Because in an age of pandemic, days off have been confusing and difficult to find. What is it to actually take a day off? But instead, we decided to, since this is an opt-in thing that we're doing for funsies for ourselves, we might as well keep the door open. Folks can join. If folks have to bounce because they are about to do a very dangerous barbecue, I wish them luck and strength on that path. In the meantime, I'm going to share just a couple of words. Hopefully this doesn't take too much time. I didn't rehearse this, so I might have picked a piece of text that's way too long. Apologies in advance, but a couple of words to acknowledge today. And then I'm going to pass the mic to my colleague so they can also acknowledge the significance of today. So I am in our notes. There's an article from Time Magazine talking about the origins of Memorial Day. I figured I'd just share this tweet thread from Clint Smith, who's a good brain that I enjoy following. Today, let's remember that the first Memorial Day celebration was held on May 1st, 1865 by Black people in South Carolina. As historian David Blight puts it, the war was over and Memorial Day has been founded by African Americans in a ritual of remembrance and consecration. I'm realizing I'm going to run out of breath reading this. So if anyone else wants to jump in and read one, go ahead. I'm just reading these in order. So go ahead and jump in. Second tweet.
During the final year of the war, the Confederates had converted the city's Washington Racecourse and Jockey Club into an outdoor prison. Union captives were kept in horrible conditions. At least 257 died of disease and were hastily buried in mass graves behind the grandstand.
After the Confederate evacuation of Charleston, Black workmen went to the site, reburied the Union dead properly, and built a high fence around the cemetery. They whitewashed the fence and built an archway on which they inscribed the words, "Martyrs of the Race Course."
The freed people, in cooperation with white missionaries and teachers, staged a parade of 10,000 on the track. A New York Tribune correspondent witnessed the event, describing a procession of friends and mourners as South Carolina and the United States never saw before.
The procession was led by 3,000 Black schoolchildren carrying armloads of roses and singing the Union marching song, John Brown's Body. Several hundred Black women followed with baskets of flowers, wreaths, and crosses.
Then came Black men marching in cadence, followed by contingents of the Union infantrymen. Within the cemetery enclosure, a Black children's choir sang, "We'll rally around the flag." The Star-Spangled Banner and spirituals before a series of Black ministers read from the Bible.
After the dedication, the crowd dispersed into the infield and did what many of us do on Memorial Day, enjoyed picnics, listened to speeches, and watched soldiers drill. Among the full brigade of Union infantrymen participating were the famous 54th Massachusetts and the 34th and 104th United Colored Troops, who performed a special double columned march around the grave site. Anyone want to read the last tweet?
The war was over and Memorial Day had been founded by African Americans in a ritual of remembrance and consecration. The war, they had boldly announced, had been about the triumph of their emancipation over a slaveholders' republic. They were themselves the true patriots.
And apparently the things that I was just reading were quoted from David, either that or this is Clint giving us the full essay in the New York Times. Thank you so much for indulging me in this moment of trying to negotiate, honoring your time, honoring the day and the holiday, and honoring the urgent work that we are all involved in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass the microphone to my partner to also acknowledge because I believe today is a holiday of some kind as well. If you could just say a few words about the time of year we're in.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Hello, my name is Kholoud Sawaf. And I just also wanted to acknowledge that today is the second day of Eid al-Fitr. I'm going to write that in the chat if you want to know how it's written. Yes, someone already, Tanya, wrote to me Eid Mubarak, and it's a very important holiday for Muslims. Over 1 billion people around the world are celebrating after a month of fasting, and it's 3 days of family gatherings. Hopefully not right now in the pandemic, family gatherings, visiting and honoring any members of the family who died. We visit the graves and we share food, and it's a day of remembrance and gratitude. So Eid Mubarak if anyone is celebrating.
Lovely, lovely. All right, so thank you so much for indulging us for our beginning moment. Now we're getting back to business as usual, where we invite you to introduce yourselves. Now, of course, we are always balancing the desire and the productive nature of hearing from every single person. This gives us a little bit of a survey of what's the field doing? What are we all doing in our different locations? But we're also trying to balance hearing from everyone and also giving ourselves enough time to have a meaty conversation, or at the very least visit one digital production and maybe learn a few things from it. So I'm going to invite you, introduce yourselves, tell us where you're coming from, what your practice is, and share, if it feels necessary, share one challenge or one discovery that feels burning and necessary to share with this group. We've just put into the chat the introductory score. And as always, since I gave it to y'all and I can barely remember it, I'm gonna model to begin. Hello, my name is Claudia Alick. My gender pronouns are they, their, she, hers. You can use those interchangeably. I'm speaking to you from the Bay Area, land of the Ohlone people. The Ohlone are still alive. Also, Zoom headquarters is based in the same location. I also like to take a moment just to acknowledge all those incarcerated, past and present. My access check-in is that I have a muscle disorder, so sometimes I'm going to look like I'm looking off in a different direction, but I'm never pulling a face or doing some extraneous communication. If it feels like that's the case, always ask. Other than that, I've got my breakfast and all of my snackage, so all my access needs are met. And I do so many things every week, so I will share this. I have been working on trying to find a way to solve the issue of there not being captions inside our meeting. So I am able to upload this meeting to YouTube because an auto caption format that auto captions it and makes it accessible. But inside this meeting, that's a piece of accessibility that's missing. It turns out Zoom doesn't do auto captioning. You have to use a third-party app to do the auto captioning, and I'm still working on finding the one that's the cheapest price point to the highest level of effectiveness, which is why this meeting is not currently captioned inside of it. That's not an access need anyone has stated. It's just me trying to reach that sort of mystical place of universal access, which I know I'm just going to keep chasing that dream, even though it's far away. And that was my check-in. Check.
Hi, my name is Kholoud Sawaf, and I am speaking to you from Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is the land of the Caddo, the Osage, and the Quapaw. Access check-in, I'm having really bad internet day. So I keep having, like, I'm having a hard time sometimes with sound, and sometimes my camera is turning off. So just wanted to share that. I am a theater director and creator. And this week I'm continuing to work on the Curbside Project and finding ways to celebrate and honor Eid al-Fitr with family and friends. And now I'm passing to Sabrina.
Hi, yes, I'm Sabrina Hamilton, talking to you from Western Massachusetts, land of the Nipmuc and Patuxent people, where I am the artistic director of the Co-Festival of Performance. One of the things I'm working on today is trying to figure out the difference in pricing for digital offerings, to both pay artists fairly and to recognize that many people are in financial distress now, and to try to figure out proper tiers and proper ways to talk about that. That's me.
Hi, I'm Mickey Goldhaber in Berkeley, California, the Ohlone land. I am the artistic director of Rye Cripps Disabled Women's Theater and lead instigator of the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival. And the thing that I've really been enjoying this week, I just posted it in the chat, is Directors Lab West is having discussions at 11 a.m. Pacific time every day. And in fact, I'm going to jump off at 11 because today is Ann James. And I'm very interested to hear what she has to say. She was in one of these meetings. The other thing that's really interesting and probably worth a field trip is Théâtre de Complicité. Today's actually the last day that they are showing The Encounter. And I think they've found an interesting way to bridge showing archival footage with making it present. And you might want to watch like the first 3 or 4 minutes just to see what they're doing. Thank you. Okay. She, her, hers. My access need is that I have to get up and stretch and move fairly often, and I will. Thank you.
Hi, this is Robert Friend. How are you all doing? I have not experienced the first 10, so I somehow ran into this online and found the title intriguing, so thank you for having me. So my pronouns are he, him, his, and my access issues is that I got a screen right here, so if you see me looking over here, it's looking at a bigger screen other than my notebook. You know, it's interesting. I'm a casualty of COVID. I was laid off on March 24th. I was VP of Business Development and Consulting for a technology company in the entertainment industry that was based natively inside Salesforce. So I'm in the process of reinventing myself, and digital media and technology is really, really important to me in terms of how I move forward. And I, in the last 60 days, have taken on several clients as a consultant and started my own business. And one of the primary areas is navigating the COVID environment, because being in the entertainment industry close to 40 years, we are heading into a new norm for those of you who are in the entertainment industry, and finding a way in which to build virtual listening and virtual presentation into the future, I believe will never go away. So I'm in the process of honing that skill. I'm also presenting my findings to the state of Connecticut, to the Connecticut Commission on the Arts, which is where I live, in the midst of a series of web presentations to the state artists and arts organizations. And I hope that this will become the future of my engagement. But anything I can learn here in terms of sponging up ideas and protocols would be really terrific. So I thank you for having me here.
this is Claudia interrupting whoever is queued up to go next, just to acknowledge that for those of us who are new to our group, we're always switching our processes around, but generally we like to have a group that's a little non-hierarchical so that I'm not managing who speaks next. So we allow folks to, in the chat, just say, I'll go next, and then you take responsibility for knowing who's before you, who's after you, and the entire group helps the conversation to go quickly. I'm handing the microphone back to whoever is supposed to introduce themselves next. Just taking this opportunity to say what our practice is out loud.
Thank you, Claudia. Hello, everyone. My name is JJ Johnson. I am from the Washington, D.C. metro area, land of the Piscataway land. Just want to acknowledge that. I am, like Robert, this is my first time. And so Claudia had called me a couple weeks ago and she had told me about this group and this process, and I was interested. I am an actor mostly. I have dabbled in some writing. And once everyone kind of went into lockdown, just in my own mode, I took to creating little comedy videos just to kind of maintain some levity online. And then I then went into a writing mode where I wrote a couple of monologues and had a sort of a small monologue contest, which ended up a couple of actors who participated ended up winning prize money as a result of that. And so I've just been looking at what people are doing and getting involved where I can and just seeing what's going on. And that's why I'm here. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing what all lies ahead.
Thank you, JJ. I'm Patricia Miller. I'm in San Francisco in the Ramaytush area of the Ohlone people. I use she or they interchangeably. I'm a freelance producer and director, writer. I also work with the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival. And I've been grading this week. I've been dealing with hundreds of people's finals, and that's what I've been doing. I'm going to confess it. That's been my day job, teaching theater. I'm very interested in the ongoing conversation about the potential accessibility that has been opened up by the fact that so many different types of entities are creating material online, and everyone, of course, is talking about the Met and the National Theater. But I mean, I would like to know how we can get the work of these smaller groups, certainly in the Bay Area and around the world, into this bigger body of an audience that's been created. Obviously, there's issues around accessibility to technology, and it's not 100% democratic, and I think that's a really big issue. But I think we should look at this and celebrate it. I also, if anyone wants a little mini report on what Ann Bogart and Jessica Hanna had to say yesterday about where we're at, maybe some of you were there, I can provide that later because there was some pithy talking points. Handing off to Tammy. Tammy.
Hey, good morning. It's Tammy coming at you from North Texas, the home of the Wichita, Waco, and affiliated tribes. My access needs, I've got my tea. I just woke up less than an hour ago. My schedule is whack, but I'm rolling with it. I feel like I'm more prolific than I've been in many, many years as a writer, and I'm generating a lot of poetry. I come at theater through spoken word poetry. In April, during National Poetry Month, I hosted an online poetry series. It was a weekly, and it went off pretty well, and I'm inspired to maybe launch monthly that's maybe more technically proficient than what we were able to do in April. My learning curve is not so steep as it was back in February and March, and I'm so eager to take on even more skills in this realm of producing online. I've been checking out a lot of material, that's being produced and presented online globally, and I'm doing that kind of autodidactic practice. But just this Saturday, I also completed a course offered in theater management by Tiffany Vega Gibson, and I don't know how many students she expected for her online course, but she ended up having over 200 people enroll, and she's going to be offering the same course again this summer. And I'll get that data together if you want to share that. It was a free online course offered through a New Orleans theater company. I can't remember the name of right now, but I can chat that up for y'all. Let's see. I'm having dreams about doing online presentations and performance. So I know I'm all about it. You know, I'm really trying to, you know, just glean as much as I can. Yeah, I'll stop there. Thanks for sharing, everybody. Glad to know you. I don't know who's next.
It's me. I thought I was pressing my space bar, but I wasn't doing it effectively. Thanks, Tammy. Ineffective space bar pressing. It's Rachel. So I'm going to put that on my resume, not as a not skill. I'm Rachel Grossman, she, her. I am here in Washington, D.C. on the land of the Piscataway and near the Nagachatunk. All my access needs are met. I am a director, devised theater artist, collaborative playwright. I was making a bunch of stuff, then I wasn't, and now I'm advising people on how to make engagement with the audience in like interactive online theater work, and how to make like actually live performances in this time that we're in. So now I'm involved in trying to create live performance, very inspired by Kholoud's work. So that's what I'm doing. Thanks.
Hi everyone. Claudia, thank you for that Memorial Day sharing. It really centered me. So my name's Joan Lipkin, and I am talking to you from Osage Nation territory, also known as St. Louis. My pronouns are she, her, hers. My access needs are met. I'm a writer, director, and social activist, and I'm currently working on online programming to use dance and theater to combat voter suppression in Missouri, which is huge here, and also to promote notaries, people using notaries. I'm also working on a project on Corona Diaries in St. Louis, but also with some folks in Eastern Europe. And I did have a discovery yesterday that I wanted to share. And that is that I've been asking people to share some aspect of their experience around the pandemic and to record them and send them to me from their iPhone. And this would be based on my having a Facebook chat and helping them to sort of figure out what it was that they wanted to send their thoughts on. And then when they send it, a lot of the time it feels stilted. And I realize it's because there's not an audience that they're saying it to. So yesterday when I was on a call with a colleague in Belgrade, I was telling him a story, and I realized that I could hit the record and that we could record on Zoom. And I talked to my editor this morning, our video editor, and he goes, yeah, we can edit. And therefore, you bypass that. I think that we lose something, even some actors that I've been asking to record, when we don't have an audience to receive, it's more difficult for us to deliver. So that was a naive, but a great discovery for me. I'm so excited to record on Zoom. And with that, I will pass and say thank you. And I will pass to Kate.
Hi, all. Kate Freer, she, her pronouns, zooming in from Lenape Koheng, otherwise known as Brooklyn. Access needs are met, though I do have this sustained stiff neck, so I'm going to be moving around a bit. Let's see. My reflection of digital space for this week is more a personal one. I'm a multimedia designer, creative technologist working mostly in live events. And I have spent so much of my career kind of cringing when people call my work slides. you know, it's usually much more, you know, it can be slides, but it is multifaceted in so many ways. But I have found that over the last few months, I have been actively designing slides for various Zoom conferences and gatherings and getting compliments on them, and I feel great pride in them. So I am finding myself really embracing the slide design, which I never thought would be what I would be doing. That's it.
Thanks everyone, nice to be here with you. Tanya Newmeyer, they, them pronouns, zooming in from Toronto, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Petun, and most recently the Mississauga of the New Credit. I'm a poet and one of the producing team over at the Toronto Poetry Slam. We had our 6th Poetry Slam last night, and we are starting to see a bit of a decline. It was a really great show featuring Ashley Hayes from the US. We had hoped to have her in person, and we were grateful still to be able to see her work. She's launched a new book recently, so you can see that on her website. And great to keep the art forum going along, but challenging to look at, you know, audience retention. Usually we have 150 to 200 people in person at most of our shows bi-weekly. So stay tuned for how that develops. I did last week mention that accessibility was really top of mind, and I'm happy to report back that I can share that I finished a little piece of writing about that, dreaming of a more accessible world in post-pandemic times. So I put that in the chat there. And on the personal front, very quickly, I had a party this weekend for no reason. I just said, hey friends, we're all online, we're hanging in there. I know people from across the country and in various countries want to come hang out. I set a Zoom hour-and-a-half time, and it was fun, believe it or not. So yeah, that was great. Sabina, you're next.
Yay, wow, a Zoom party. I feel like I'm gonna have to do that next weekend. That sounds super fun. My name is Sabina. I use she, her pronouns. I'm in New York, which is Lenape land. All my access needs are met. I am a theater director and performer, and I'm part of an organization called Fresh Lime Soda Productions, which is a South Asian theater ensemble. Yeah, and so one challenge in the producing world this week is definitely digital outreach, where we started in January. So a lot of our outreach has been digital already, and so continuing to do that while also telling more people about our events without being able to like spam in person or go to fairs or things like that has been difficult, but yeah. Next is Alicia.
Hello. Hi, I'm new to this this virtual space, but I'm very glad to be here. My name is Alicia, she, her pronouns. I'm in Brooklyn as well, Lenape territory. Yeah, I guess like my background is I work more in the film industry, and I have a digital media and marketing background. And I'm currently working with Experimental Bitch Presents, which is a theater performance company here in New York, trying to help them like transition their productions and like performances onto the digital platform. So I'm doing that. We're gonna have a reading in June 11th, and I've just been brought on to like figure out how we're going to essentially use Zoom and do a pre-recorded edited version that will then stream and then have a feedback session that's live following. So yeah, but I'm excited to hear how everyone else is working and what other ideas are out there. So thank you.
Have we heard from everyone?
No, not from Barack.
Well, Barack is invited to unmute and join us to introduce themselves, but if they do not feel like it, they also do not have to. And I'm seeing a lot of awesome action happening in the chat. So I'm 100% dropping out of our conversation so I can look at the chat. And
Hi, Barack.
oh, hey.
I'm happy to speak with reading for you if you want. Due to recording, I will not be offering audio or video.
Thank you.
So maybe we should just read that ourselves to keep it confidential.
Yeah, and my question is for Barack. A, thank you for joining us. Thank you for surfacing the fact that you don't feel comfortable having your image recorded and shared with others, or your voice recorded and shared with others. Full respect for that. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for introducing yourself via the chat. Do we have your permission to voice this out loud? All right, then Tanya, go for it.
Right, so due to recording, I will not be offering audio or video, but want to share in the chat to check in profound respect for the Indigenous people who are the original and ongoing caretakers of Turtle Island, who continue to be exploited and violated due to the seismic impact of colonization. I'm currently residing on the ceded and unceded territories of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples in what is now called Chicago. I am deeply grateful to be here with these people at this moment and seek to treat the land and each other with the same depth of care to which these territories have been tended to. I use they, he pronouns when excess need is in relation to feeling triggered by being recorded, hence why I'm not offering audio video. I do appreciate and use captions, but it is not a requirement today for me to listen and witness. What I would ask also is if people could speak perhaps a little more slowly. Oh, sorry, I'm rushing. They might, than they might regularly do. Those are my access needs. Through my own creative work, I am invested in intersectionality, queerness, disability culture, accessibility, and access aesthetics. This has included engaging virtually with disabled artists across Turtle Island, exploring the creative process for live art digitally, and most recently, organizing a virtual retreat gathering. I am the director of programs for a contemporary arts organization in Chicago, Three Walls. Currently, we are expanding our virtual engagement and want to build a further understanding surrounding ways we can nuance and intention to deepen our relationship with creative communities, centering Black, Indigenous, and people of color, intersectional identities inclusive of 2SQIA, and deaf and disabled folks.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for voicing. Thank you for your participation and also stating clearly what your needs are. That is how we actually make our spaces accessible. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a question for anyone else on this call. 2SQIA. I'm actually unfamiliar with that. Wait, two-spirit queer, IA. What's the I for? Intersex. All right, thank you, my friends, for indulging me as I was trying to make meaning out of the acronym. There we go. And asexual. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I believe we have all introduced ourselves. We've surfaced a bunch of awesome topics that we could just spend the next 30 minutes talking about. We could have a conversation about how do we retain our audiences? We could have a conversation about, well, this is how we're negotiating, valuing the work and distributing the work, and these are some of the price points we're talking about and some of the complications around that. Those are two gigantic, beautiful conversations. I'm going to take a quick moment to share with you what we had on our agenda. Oh, and I also want to acknowledge that Danny couldn't be with us today. It takes 3 or 4 of us all working really hard to capture the awesome brilliance that folks are dropping when they're speaking. It's super useful to have you drop links in the chat. It's even more useful if you just join us in the notes and just start to craft your own narrative. We invite you to come join us. Your typing helps us, but I'm also acknowledging that we missed capturing any of the awesomeness that Robert dropped and any of the awesome that Tanya dropped, because I was busy, I was like, let me find that link from Ann James and the thing. So please feel free to drop some links with specificity so we can connect with your work outside of this gathering. That invitation is not only to Robert and Tanya, but to everyone. But I want to acknowledge I did not get your notes taken. Apologies. In our notes, we had potential conversations to have, and I'm going to try and slow myself down. So I had mentioned that we had not resolved our captioning issues for this meeting, and that I was looking for a third-party closed captioning service to integrate with Zoom, and one of our participants suggested Otter. So I look forward to trying that out. I attended the Jeffrey Lowe Bench Project, and I thought that might be a fun field trip for 5 minutes. So you could look at how they were using an embedded platform on their site for their audiencing and using a Twitch platform to share it. So they were using OBS plus Twitch. So I thought that might be interesting to check out, again, real quickly. And I am always hungry in these meetings to surface both the digital awesome stuff we're doing, the philosophical kind of field-wide meaning making and building that we're doing, as well as the physically embodied work that's happening. And I also say it's useful for folks to report out from the spaces that they are in. We're in a dynamic moment of history where, I don't know about y'all, but I'm involved in 2 or 3 national field-wide ideation things a week. So bringing that into this conversation is beautiful. So now that I've listed the magnificent wealth of riches we have, do we want to take 5 minutes to share the bench project real quick and then transition to whatever is burning? So like once we're done looking at the bench project, I'm just going to ask somebody, unmute yourselves and say, I want to talk about this. And then we'll do that for the rest of our time together. Oh, and thank you, Michaela, for mentioning the passing in the chat, the passing of Stacy Park. And there was a memorial caravan for the disabled activist Stacy Park. And it was an amazing reinvention of the memorial service for social distancing time. Fully agree. Also, I ended up participating, as I always participate, through the internet. But there's been a lot of magnificent meaning making and mourning happening online. And it's weird times. Okay, so I'm going to hit my share screen. I'm sharing my Chrome. There we go. Claudia Alick is sharing her Chrome. I'm trying to do a thing where I only have the thing we're supposed to be looking at in here, and yet I keep not doing it. So I'm a genius. Oh, that's because the notes are in here. The link is in here. So I'm clicking on the Jeffrey Lowe link project. Boom, boom. Come on. There we go. I can click a link. All right. So this took place on May 22nd at 7 p.m. It was a co-production between Theater Bay Area Performing Arts Worker for the Theater Bay Area Performing Arts Worker Relief Fund, TheaterWorks Silicon Valley, Los Altos Stage, Hill Barn Theater, City Lights Theater Company. You could click here to download their program, which I really appreciated. I like having lists of the people who made the thing happen and further places to read more about who they are and what they're doing and why they're doing it. I love a program, and I desperately hope that in our new age of transmedia, digital, living in digital spaces, we don't lose this beautiful communicative document, even when it's just a PDF. I love it so much. This is Tassi. Tassi was an actor in one of the things and also acted as their main digital producer. Tassi has been unable to make our gatherings on Mondays because Tassi does a live stream on Mondays, but has been wanting to join us and says hello and shouts out and hi to everybody. Tassi is based in the Bay Area, has a Discord for like Bay Area digital nerds. So we tend to, I believe that's where we crossed paths, just because he has a cool Twitch stream that isn't about theater, it's just a cool Twitch stream. But he has been offering his skill sets to the community. So this is what the production looked like. And actually here, before I hit play on the production, let me see if, oh, the box is missing. Okay, so there was, when I saw this in real time, there was this box. This box is now archival, but underneath it, there was another box. And inside that box we were chatting with each other the entire time. So it was an ongoing, just running, hey, how you doing? I'm here in the audience. Oh, my avatar is this, but I'm actually this person. Oh, it's good to see you. So, and that was actually super productive activity. Let me hit play and then move us back to the.
Yeah. Once again, shout out Jeffrey Lowe. Happy birthday. What's good, Bench Project? I'm Dov.
Yeah, all right. So
she just wanna dance till her feet tired.
So before it starts, oh, isn't this a funny little photo here?
This is sensory appeal, yeah.
I know, it's funny, right? There's Jeffrey Lowe on his face, just like.
It's to see you, and I can't believe it's been so long.
That's the play. I'm trying to get to the.
Oh,
all right, here's Toss.
boy.
Oh, wait, here's
any of the Green Berets from our boy Green Banana's Twitch stream. Shout out to you guys for joining on. We are going to have a wonderful night of digital stories for you all today by some amazing artists from primarily the Bay Area, but all over the globe. And we are just so excited to enjoy some theater tonight. Collaborated with in the past or have just become friends with.
You, Mom? I don't know. A few days, once a week. It's gotten less. That's.
Most of these plays I noticed, really beautiful, super adorable, all written
great. You look
for Zoom.
You
as if the
really
characters are using Zoom.
I don't think I've ever seen you in a dress
for the most part, except for one.
I wore one to mock trial. I mean, a skirt.
Oh yeah.
Much of theater in the Bay Area during Shelter in Place possible. His name is Tassi Alabastro, and he is running, this is embedded onto my website, but really what this is running off of is his Streamlabs OBS on his Twitch stream, Green Bananas, and I would love one for air horns. I'd love for Tassi to jump on and to give you a little bit about his work and his Twitch stream, so you guys can continue to support him as well.
Hi, boys. Oh.
So this is what I'm following. This is the nonsense I'm here for. He's a great theater artist. He works with hip-hop theater producers as well, so there's a couple of different places, but his Twitch stream is mostly really dope video games. I love it. All right, I'm gonna hit stop. There we go. I'm gonna hit stop share. So basically that's what that was. I'm gonna hush and give the mic. We've now done our field trip. I'm not gonna give the mic to anyone else since we've had a lot of different things we could talk about. Whoever wants to talk about something, go for it. It can be a reflection on the thing we just experienced or something new. Patricia is putting her hand up.
I just want you to repeat to me how was the platform working where you had a live performance and live chat?
Yes, so this is what I'm gonna do for us. Tassi did a 2-hour, come join me on my Twitch stream and I'll talk to you about OBS kind of session. And I had the notes for that, the link to that in our notes for 4 sessions. I'm gonna find that link and put it back in so you're gonna be experiencing Tassi in his full Twitch streaminess, being like, yo, air horn, blah, blah, blah. But you're also going to be learning how to use OBS, what an OBS is. He tends to default to the system he likes. There's a lot of different options, but it's a beautiful resource. What he's doing is, this is Jeffrey Lowe's website. The project was being produced through Tassi's Twitch stream, which was embedded on Jeffrey Lowe's website. Hopefully I am saying what actually happened. I look forward to reminding, of inviting Jeffrey to come and maybe tell us directly himself, since Tassi can never make it, because he's on Twitch.
The reason that sounds good to me is when we looked into Twitch for, did we even use Twitch for Mickey and Tanya? Didn't we use Twitch for the Bay Area Women's Festival? I couldn't find anything in there that wasn't a bunch of violent video games. I went hunting around looking for the North Carolina Women's Festival, and I was like, in my face, violence in my face, blood on the floor, just we just saw. And so I've been avoiding Twitch other than DJ parties for that reason.
Yeah, North Carolina Women's Theater Festival has a Twitch channel, and they streamed many virtual readings on it, including the Lady Scribblers. but it's true, if you didn't have the exact link to go directly to it, it was hard to find it. So that's the only thing I know.
And I think that this, forgive me, I'm eating an orange while I'm trying to talk. This has a little bit of resonance with what Tanya was sharing about how her digital event, or the digital event that they are producing, has had audience, has had less audience turnout. So the questions are, where are audience? How are we finding audience? And how are we retaining audience? How does audience know where they are? I really appreciated that this was embedded in Jeffrey's page, because it gave me, I understood that this was Jeffrey's project, who the community was. If it was in Twitch, it feels like it's everywhere and nowhere all at once.
This is Robert. You know, you bring up a really interesting question. Because from my vantage point, the only way we are going to succeed in this business is if we have an ongoing relationship with our audience that is not based on this, but is continual, based on so many different levels. And it means that we have to use every channel that we have to communicate with them and keep them informed and be in relationship. And so to me, I don't know how everyone is operating in their worlds, but and where they're keeping that information and how they're housing it and how they're managing the deep relationships and the dialogues they're having. But from my vantage point, that's really the core. And if we have that relationship and it's credible and we're giving them wow moments in our delivery of the conversations that we have, then they'll keep coming back. And I'm curious to know how you're all doing that, because to me, this is, before we do anything, if we're not doing that, we're going to have challenges. So I just wanted to comment on that.
I'm happy to respond both directly and tangentially, Robert, because I think that that's been something that I have brought up a few times here about how the online world is modeling like the relationships that we have in the physical or analog world, whatever you want to call it. And so, you know, for us, that's why I mentioned how many people we usually get at our physical space, which is inaccessible, the Drake Hotel Underground at Queen Street West in Toronto. But so I think there were a couple of things that happened on the back end for us, which was there were like several really glitchy Facebook link problems to get to Eventbrite to get people into our event. So we have overall engagement through, you know, some word of mouth, through Twitter, through Instagram. We're finding people are migrating more from our, you know, 5,000 whatever followers for the Poetry Slam, more so onto Instagram. Which I think does model other social media use, and we are on Facebook. So we have a comprehensive strategy, and we've been in the city for 15 years, just about 15. And so I think all of those other pieces are in place, but I had heard on this call for a couple of weeks that people were experiencing Zoom fatigue and digital online fatigue. So what I would say tangentially is that when I wrote my friends saying, hey, if you don't know how to use Zoom, I'm happy to tell you how to use it, I feel like there's a widening, ever widening gap. So I had friends on the call who had never been on a Zoom call before. I had a friend on the call who's been working on Zoom for years and years and years. And I said in the email, yes, if you don't know how to use it, happy to show you. If you're there for work all the time, I find that seeing my friends' faces is actually different than seeing a colleague's face. And, you know, some of the conversations might be overlapping, but some of the things about getting a virtual garden tour, you know, we're very different than, you know, what I usually talk about in terms of poetry. So I want to echo that the relationships that we have in physical, non-digital, analog space are really important to like embed in several platforms. But I think as a mode of relationship building, like, and continuity building, so that we are staying connected, providing value, and also reducing impacts of isolation and mental health impacts at this time. So that's a little bit about sort of what I was writing about in that article that I shared.
I forget what event I was attending that brought up this particular point. So when I was producing analog style with my physical body and physical space, one of my techniques was to to wander the community and tell people who looked like they would be into what I was making, hey, you should come check out this thing I'm doing. I did this when I was producing in New York. I did this when I was producing in Oregon. It's a thing Claudia does, and it's incredibly effective. When you go to one person and go, I've noticed you, and I think you specifically should go check out this thing. I'm not going to help you out at all. Good luck. I've been wondering, what's the equivalent to that audience development technique online? Is it me doing my drive-by DM where I'm just like, hey, I saw your awesome replies to that person in Twitter. You should totally join this. I'm wondering, what is the equivalent of having signage? Oh, I know what it was. It was the Parable of the Sower event. I had planned to go. My meeting went late, so I didn't enter the space, but then a friend did a watch party, which triggered me to remember, oh, you can re-enter this later. So the watch party was almost the equivalent of the person standing outside of the club being like, yo, there's something cool going on in here. Come on in. Just wondering, what are the equivalents in your practice, in your world?
Claudia, are you referring to the digital world? Like, what's the equivalent in that media? Yeah, it's, I think you need to, you're starting with a base audience, right? And you're talking about, I think, connecting with someone for the first time. Is that I think is what you're saying? Or are you talking about going to someone that you've seen and you've touched in different ways through your analog venture, and now you're bringing them in?
I think that I was asking a very broad question to everyone. In your experience in the last few months, or perhaps in your entire lives, of engaging with or creating work in a transmedia modality in both physical space and digital space, what is the digital equivalent of organically gathering audience to your show? Is there a digital equivalent? So that's kind of the question. Ooh, Michaela, do you want to voice that comment? I love it.
I find people to join RICRIPS in doctors' offices, cafes, on street corners. I go up to a woman with a disability who I connect with, in some way we catch each other's eye, and, hi, are you a writer performer? Would you be interested in, and most of the time it just leads to an interesting conversation. But we're not really actively in a recruiting mode right now, but I am thinking that, certainly with working with the virtual Crip Camp, there might be some opportunities to reach around the country and engage with other writer performers with disabilities.
I think most of the how I find out about things even before then has been social media. It's all digital for me. Is that I also don't come from a theater world as well. So most of the communication I have is through social media, through Instagram, through Facebook. I find out about events that way, through people posting about them. Is mostly people I follow that post. I take note, and then throughout all of this, I've been finding out about more organizations and things that I've never heard about before through other people sharing. And that's how I get things.
I don't want to redirect, but as I said before, I'm really interested in, as there is, some of these events have had a much wider audience in the past. And there's a hope that this could be a possibility of both integrating greater accessibility into live work. Not that we're ever going to go back the way it was before. Whatever it is that's coming next, whatever this next phase is, but it's going to be live work of how do we bring this digital connectivity and potential accessibility forward without, are we looking at a future of live work with, tweet stands like I believe some rock group had an area of concerts where you were actually allowed to like tape the concert. I mean, these days everyone's got an iPhone out for live work anyway. Is there a way to capture this broader demographic and bring them work forward into whatever work we do, whether it's digital work or live work?
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, Claudia, about how the Facebook algorithm, when it first emerged, was kind of, through my impression of it, maybe seemed like a radical mode of connecting, because it had some like technological like prowess to it, right? So if you couldn't find your high school or elementary school friend in the phone book in an old-fashioned way, suddenly, because your friend or your brother or your cousin kept in touch via email once a year with that elementary or high school, you know, if you're following the map, then you were able to find that person. So what I'm thinking about is that actually what happens online is different from what happens in physical space. I think it's analogous, and it also works differently. So I think social media is where we tend to, in some spaces, like look for other people. But I think in terms of integrating that, like one thing we do at the Poetry Slam is we say like, hey, artists, because artists are always, you know, hustling, for lack of better words, trying to find a way to be, or like share your Instagram handles in the chat, you know, share your Twitter handle, let us know where we can find you, what's your website. So I think one thing might be is, for example, like I've been having these great conversations with, you know, 20 of you, and do I follow many of you on social media yet? You know, Claudia for sure, but you know, where do I find the rest of you? Should I be looking on LinkedIn? You know, even in this space, we actually haven't done that thing of like, anyone want to be connected? Aside from the email, or there is the Facebook group, right? So yeah, how do we, I hold that question with you, but I'm thinking about those parallels and divergences.
Well, I'm also thinking about how capitalism enters into all of these systems. So originally the design impulse for the algorithms, and I can only speak to some of the original design impulses for YouTube and a little bit about Facebook, but those algorithms were designed to make the user have the best user experience. They were designed to make sure the user got the content that they wanted and desired and had the smoothest experience, because they wanted the initial users to become advocates for the platform. After a certain amount of time, the platforms they pivoted their strategy, and the algorithms were no longer about making sure I, the user, was connected to the content or the users I wanted to be connected to. They were about keeping me on the site and extracting my data, actually exposing me and encouraging me to watch stuff that the algorithm wanted me to watch, not stuff I actually wanted to watch. So just yes to everything you're saying. But I also feel like we've got some interesting things happening right now. So we're in a time of disruption where the past paradigm was one where industrialized definitions, they were created to silo us into very specific modes of cultural production, modes of being able to access resources, modes of levels of compensation, all of that. In a transmedia frame, you can throw all of that away, because we're not just doing community theater with the kids and it's just a building, so nobody needs to get paid. We're actually using technology. Should this be compensated on the same levels that commercial cultural production should be compensated? I'm hungry for that conversation. I feel like some of the siloed definitions for the different ways we distribute and create our work, all those definitions were created to box us up into places where we have less access to things. I just want to soapbox. Apologies for that. Let me give the microphone back to someone else, because I was just riffing. I'm tempted to give the microphone to Sabina, if Sabina is here, because Tanya, you mentioned our own internal connectivity. And that was a question that we've been trying to figure out, because we just did this. And then we kept doing it. And then like by the 8th one, we were like, wow, we've created so much stuff. We've risen to the level of actually needing a digital space where we can all go to access all the things we've made together. And Sabina made a website. I was gonna have Sabina share their screen, but I feel like their camera's off for a reason. So, you're here, yay. Hi.
Sorry, my camera was just off because I have terrible connectivity.
That's no problem. Do you want me to share the website that you put together, or would you
try to share it? Because I have the mobile version of the site is still kind of wonky right now, but the regular version of the site is fine. Sorry, I just had to pull it up.
You're doing awesome. I put a link to it in the notes document. There's a link because I was preparing us.
Okay, also just a heads up, I'm a theater director, not a website designer, so your expectations are low. Okay. Here we go. This is the website. Our mission. Also, thank you to Tanya for helping copy edit this and make the words sound coherent. Lots of organizers. We're trying to figure out a way to include all the different collaborators who have involved themselves with us in any way to be included on the website. And, you know, session notes available and YouTube links, etc. Yes, oh my God, so many familiar faces. Anyway, so we just wanted to have some, and how do I exit this? Great. We just wanted to have some way to like share resources and also like have a digital home. Like an alternative to that also like is an Instagram or Facebook, but this is a little more like easily updatable if information changes and like allows a better archival of resources as well.
Now, of course, we're doing this for free 99. Nobody's getting paid. Everyone's volunteering their time. Thank you to everyone whose labor helped to create that digital space that's going to allow us to be more productive and connective with each other. Big pie in the sky dreams. Somehow that digital space being a method for all of us to be connected to each other without the intermediary of a Facebook or a Twitter. How do we manifest that reality without creating something that's a bureaucratic and administrative gigantic workload? We look forward to discovering that with you. In the meantime, thank you so much for your labor, Sabina. Thank you so much to the entire Calling Up team. Thank you to everyone who's a part of this group that helped to make that manifest. We're going to be continuing to improve it, and Claudia is going to spend some of her own money to make it a real website someday, not next week. Any quick reflections before we pivot to more conversations or more field trips?
Hi, I am Diana Wyan, a producer at Directors Lab West. Before we begin, it is Memorial Day here in the U.S., so
Michaela, I think we're, or Mickey.
Someone's watching a movie of the.
Oh, that's what that is. Because I was like, that felt like someone was talking to me, but from another room.
Yeah.
I was listening. That's amazing. I'm also just so delighted that I'm not the only one who does the naughty multitasking by being like, oh yeah, I can be in 2 learning sessions at the same time. No problem. Beautiful. I believe I put a link to that session. I think that was Ann James's, the session that Ann James is doing. I put a link to that in our notes. Any reflections or conversations? I also want to make sure that we have a little bit of time because JJ actually came to share a little bit about the monologue contest that they put together. All right, have fun at Directors Lab West. Tell Ann James hello from us. Get that knowledge on. Hopefully there will be an archived copy of it. I gotta say, the entire making things actually only be available for a short amount of time or only available live, I hate it. I want things to be accessible always and forever. But yeah, any reflections on the website or the previous conversation we were having?
I come from like a digital media website, web design background actually. So, but you can also, if you want to get away from Facebook and and all of that. You can also have like a members section on Wix and have your own members chat and all of that. So like that's also something you can start to incorporate.
Do you feel like people are hesitant to like sign up for like a new service, even if it's like they know the intentions, like trying to not be mediated by another party? Do you think people will like be wary of joining something or just like have fatigue? Or do you feel like people are like, this is exciting and cool?
So is your goal to like get other people outside of this group to access the website and all of that? Is that the goal?
I think the goal, I'm not sure actually. I feel like there's two schools of thought. One, definitely want to expand like resources to other people, but I think generally like keeping the group as like this size, I think is a fine goal as well. Yeah, so I guess the answer to that is kind of both at the same time. Like we want to have the resources accessible to other people, but we're not like trying to build like a membership of like 500 people to attend these sessions and have them be super anonymous.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're keeping the group kind of small, then I would assume that the people you're trying to target as far as like signing up for this process would be the people you already have here, and we're already all here, so I would assume that kind of solves that issue. I think like perhaps if you were to use the members portion of that site, it would make sense to keep it with that small group that you're talking about, and then like also like having like a public, how you have it right now with the resources like available for all. And so I think that kind of like solves that. Yeah, that would be my thought.
I'm going to slip in with a shout out to what we just witnessed and what this just was. So I don't know if you think of it this way, but I think of what you just did was a dramaturgical exercise of looking at how does this website, how do we want human beings to be performing? What are the design functions we need to have so that those performances will take place? What are the design functions that invite particular types of performance? Who are the communities that we want to be performing? So we've identified, well, we like that this group, for the precious 90 minutes we have, we like that this is a group that is not 500 people. This would be a less productive, we'd have to split off into different groups. I think at a certain point, that's our plan. If we become larger than we are, we split off into separate conversations and then we no longer get to have one gigantic one. So we know that the website is not designed to be promotional. We're not trying to recruit or promote people. What we're trying to do is create a space that is accessible and inclusive, and also is, I guess accessible is the word, that has content that people who aren't joining us right now can join and access.
Great.
I just saw Patricia do a hand movement. Was that an indication of thoughts and ideas?
Well, looking at it, it looks like it is promoting the 4 people that are on there. And it looks like, to be quite honest, it seems to me as a front page, like there could be a page that has organizers on it. But I think if it's genuinely a peer-driven piece, which it seems to have been over the last 10 sessions, I think I might have missed one of them, but it's been very peer, and there's been a core group, and then there's been fantastic folks that have come in and out for a few. Looking at that, I was like, oh, okay, this is the thing of those 4 people. I'm into those 4 people. I'm not into those 4 people. Obviously, I am into you guys because we've been here for all these weeks. But just from a design perspective, that's my over-talked critique.
I love that feedback. I'm grinning like a maniac because that was one of the big topics we talked about yesterday, where we were like, okay, well, because first I have to acknowledge that Sabina was like, we have to acknowledge the organizers of this. You have to be on it. And both Kholoud and I were like, no, we don't need to. Come on, we just want a site that has the links on it. Sabina was like, no, that's an important communicative step. And it is, because if you have further questions, if you want to know more about this, you do need to go to the folks who are doing the organizing labor. But this is not just us, and we're not the only ones organizing. So how do we create the circumstances where all of the human beings who are building the things can be acknowledged? And also, how can we make sure we're really clearly communicating what our structure is and our values? Because we're non-hierarchical, but the act of acknowledging that there's a couple of people who put together the Zoom session, it does do that. And my biggest question is, how do we accomplish that without creating a second job for Sabina? Because I don't want Sabina to actually be spending a lot of time putting pictures and bios on the website. I look forward to figuring it out.
And I think HowlRound's got a good model. You know, when you look at the interface, it's like, this is a collective space that you might be in one day. You know what I mean? And we're not having a graphic design meeting because we're going to wait to see what JJ's got to say. But
ultimately, though, these are really useful things to be talking about, because this isn't a nerdy graphic design meeting or conversation. This is a design, digital communications, dramaturgical exploration. I mean, to a certain extent, it's a little wonky and nerdy, but also I think it's productive. Thank you, though, for acknowledging that we should pivot and allow JJ to share a little bit about the project that he was working on, just because I thought it was a really cool model that no one else has talked about. But before we transition firmly, shout out to the topic that we just talked about. And if anyone has any ideas about how to accomplish that, I want to take this moment to explicitly invite everyone who wants to. You're totally invited to join our Sunday planning sessions at 10. I just didn't want to be annoying and put extra things on your plate, but Sundays, 10 o'clock, we meet for 15 to 60 minutes to go, all right, well, I guess this is the agenda and this is what we're doing. This is how we can best serve each. So everyone's invited to join us if they want to. I am now taking the microphone and handing it officially to you, JJ.
Thank you, Claudia. Last month I held a monologue contest that just kind of happened on the fly. A young actor had approached me a couple of months ago about writing a monologue a month for him during this lockdown. And at first I was like, I don't know if I can, come up with content, once a month. I don't really write a lot. It's something I did like a couple of years ago. I wrote my first full-length play, but mostly I'm an actor just chasing gigs. And once I wrote my first monologue for him back in April, I just had the thought, I wonder what it would be like to see many people do this monologue, like different takes on it. And so I said, well, I've given him that monologue. I don't want to take that monologue and, have other people use it. So I said, I need to write another one and then maybe just have some sort of contest. I don't have a lot of money, but I can like offer something and maybe just have some sort of fun, and whoever wants to participate can participate, and, just gather some friends and who can judge the videos that are submitted and go from there. And so I wrote a quick monologue that had to do with someone complaining about family members sending conspiracy theories about the coronavirus, and just kind of those pet peeves that I deal with when I get those memes and those videos from family members who are talking about 5G and et cetera. So I wrote this monologue, and I announced it on Facebook that anyone who wants to participate or wants to enroll. I was for this particular contest, I was looking for African American participants. And I posted it around Facebook in the different Facebook groups and got a lot of response. And what initially I thought would be just something fun for my local DC theater community ended up being something that, went national. And I was getting, replies from people from Colorado and Georgia and, New York, New Jersey, all around the country. And so I was thrilled about that. And as the week started to go on, I gave people about 2 weeks to get the monologue, put it on video and get it back to me. And during that time, I had friends starting to reach out to say they wanted to add, to donate money to add to the grand prizes. And so what started out as, I think a grand total of like $60 altogether for first, second, and third place. By the time we got to the due date, we had over $450, I think, grand prize that these winners were able to take home. And I think first place winner got like $225. Second place was like $150, and then third was less than that. But Yeah, but just as a result of this one actor who asked me to write monologues for him, it inspired this whole monologue contest. And it was just, it also was thrilling the day that I dropped the videos of the top 3 winners, just how people kind of swarmed to watch these videos, and like old friends were coming back to see, you know, these videos. And it was also just very interesting as someone who was trying out playwriting to see the different takes on one piece, and to see people who aren't in theater see that, and, you know, them witness like, oh, this is what art can be. This is, you know, like I can see, you know, it's the same words, but the way, you know, James did it is very different from the way Makanya did it, but it's all very effective. So I don't know, it was just kind of something on the fly that I tried. It was interesting. I want to do it again. So now I'm just trying to formulate an idea for the next monologue, but that's just kind of something that I was able to do during, you know, these times of lockdown and pandemic. And I'll hand the mic back to whoever wants it.
What I love about your project is it underlines a dissolving of the necessity of institution to create cultural production and distribute it and produce it. So I loved that. I love that you were working I love that you were working as an individual to manifest this. It felt like you manifested a large group of people from different locations. It seemed like you primarily used personal relationships, but the platform that those personal relationships were activated on was Facebook.
And as a result, I was able to meet new people. Like some of the contestants, you know, are now like Facebook friends, and, you know, they show me things now, and, you know, so I was able to formulate new relationships as a result of.
Tanya, do you want to share about that? Oh yeah, I saw that project. Yes,
You
please.
did.
Yeah.
Hooray.
Yeah.
Sure. So Britta B, I guess I can just show you the link, is a friend and colleague. And so her intention was to, you can see it was a huge success. So as a poet, as a spoken word artist, she invited folks, because it's a pandemic, to open those drawers where they have journals and books of unpublished work around, and tend to it, edit it, and submit it to her. So she gave out the prize, and this is who won first and runner-up in the second time. There's some poetry, if I scroll down below here, some thinking about what inspired the work. And then, as I mentioned in the chat, she's also just done a second iteration of this. So the last deadline was on May 20th. So what I see as similarly intentioned to JJ's work is that it comes from this place of like hospitality and generosity, of saying, hey, we're here, and community building, right? Like, what can we do? What can we do now, and how will it be helpful for us? And then, as Claudia mentioned, it also subverts the way that typically work is shared through institutions, right? So especially like traditional forms of publishing poetry is like very like inaccessible in certain ways and not community oriented. And what tends to be radical about slam, and where Britta and I have come from, you know, amongst good company here as well, is that it invites people in, and it invites community building and capacity building. It's more collaborative and less hierarchical in my experience. So grateful for Britta B.
Yeah. In the notes, I have placed a link to one of I think the winning monologue. So if you go into the notes, you can see the link to the winning monologue. And I also love, just as an added cool thing from your project, was I was exposed to a bunch of new African-American actors. And I was like, thank you for doing that, because I, as a producer, I'm always hungry to learn, to witness and experience actors being awesome. That was dope. I do want to hear from Patricia, because we given the invitation for folks to say, oh, well, this is something I learned from something else out in the world. Very quickly, before we go to that, because that might take up the rest of our conversation time, wanted to say out loud, in our last meeting, Ian Garrett was here. Ian posted on our Transmedia Performance Facebook group that Toaster Lab is beginning their big atelier project. I put a link to it. They're doing a hackathon like June 13th. They're doing some the cool performance with Rulan, Indigenous Futurities, Dancing Earth in Cyberspace. That's June 18th. I'm so darn excited for that. So more information is on the Transmedia Facebook page. I left a link to it. I feel like Ian is putting together some really beautifully dynamic digital spaces and physical spaces where folks can be learning some new skill sets about mixed reality performance, as well as supporting some dope artists. Dancing Earth, yeah. All right, so we're gonna do a quick transition. I'm pivoting back to leaning back and letting other people talk and tell us about things you learned out in the world.
Is that directly to me or anyone?
That was to anyone, but you were the one who queued up first.
Oh, well, this is not going to take very long. It was part of Directors Labs West, and Bogart was late, and there was another woman that was on. It was absolutely incredible, and that was awesome. And when she came on, it was a little depressing. Like, I'm sure you're familiar with her work, and her work is, well, this is my personal subjective experience. Initially depressing because she was quite dismissive of what she'd seen of the first 2 months of, say, pandemic work. And she said, you know, I'm looking, everyone's out there online throwing work together, and it's basically just self-expression. And she was very, I mean, she's an incredible person. So she caught herself and she's like, I realize that that's judgmental, that it's self-expression. She said she referred to a conversation she'd had with Tina Howe, who said this is people's active mourning. The fact that they're throwing material out there is a human act of mourning, and it's a reaction. And so Bogart caught herself, and in my interpretation of what she said, she transitioned to a better metaphor, which is very interesting. She said, she started thinking about prisoners of war and how they used to tap on metal, on pipes to connect to each other in their isolation, to tap to say, are you there? Do you hear me? I have something to say. And that she was actually seeing this initial work as a sort of reach out through the screen to, you know, to try to touch and experience other people and share their experience. And she then moved into a different phase where she referred to Robert Brunstein, who's like, you know, a beloved dinosaur of dramaturgy. That he said there's 3 things you need in theater to make theater: passion, something to say, and technique. And that she pointed out that we all have passion because everyone's out there tapping on their pipes. Obviously something to say, that's getting worked out. But she, in her belief, we have not yet have any clue about techniques, about how to make theater in the digital space. And I thought rather smugly to myself, well, I know some very smart people who get together on Monday morning who could actually educate about it. And I'm very excited about what this group does in terms of not only sharing how we use the screen space, but also what microphones people are using, the adjustment of lighting, design elements, Kate and her screens or whatever else she's doing. And as well as the outreach into the audience experience where their space is shared with our space. And I think we are trying to, in this group, we've got a lot of balls up in the air. I know JJ and Robert are new to coming to the meeting, and this one's been a little bit more squirrely, like squirrel-brained. Whoop, whoop, we're over here, we're over there. But I really appreciate the eclectic, multi-platform, I come out of this meeting with so much practical knowledge and so many philosophical and ethical things to consider. And Claudia, I'm just stealing the words that's come out of your mouth because you have an incredibly articulate frame. And that's pretty much my report on where Anne Bogart is now. And I do adore her work. So I hope I represented her kindly. I just thought that was an interesting metaphor about the tapping on the metal pipes. Joan, I think maybe you were in the same meeting.
What was the conversation? Like, what was it called? I was trying to find a link to it your entire time, and I was like,
it's Directors Lab West.
Oh, Directors Lab West. Cool.
And so it's on, it should be on HowlRound, I would imagine.
Yes.
Or maybe they're archiving it on Directors Labs West Facebook page.
They're running a series of conversations, I think almost every day this week. I was on the conversation, and I love Anne's work. Part of me cringed when she said she really didn't like self-expression, because I thought, isn't almost everything self-expression? And it's just the filter. And then as somebody who's done community-based work, which I know saves the lives of some of the people that we work with, you know, but what I decided was to pivot and think about what she was saying differently, which is not that people shouldn't express themselves, but always there should be some attention to the artfulness through which they will then express themselves. And we always said with our disability project, because I have had an ensemble of people with disabilities for over 20 years, that we don't want anybody to applaud for them because they can use a wheelchair and get on stage. We want them to applaud because the artistry of what they have to share is what moves people. But, you know, I decided this was just the way she was talking about it, that actually her intention, I don't know if you felt this way, Patricia, but she's very big on technique. But don't we all need technique? We are all using some form of self-expression, no matter what the work is that we are creating, devising, producing, because it's our choice to do that, and that reflects ourselves on some level, right? Our biases, our choices. Is that making sense what I'm saying? Yeah, Tanya's snapping. And, but you know, you talk about hierarchy. There's a real hierarchy between certain kinds of work and community-based work, and the community-based work really gets dissed a lot. Right?
And one thing she did say, and we've heard folks say that on this call before, is that it's the bigger organizations that are going to have the hard time turning this around, and that it's the smaller organizations, it's the guerrilla organizations, it's the small teams that are adaptable, that may indeed survive and maintain continuation of work in that way.
Because we're not as institutionalized, because we're more nimble, because we have brilliant minds on this call who are helping us figure out how to do it. The other thing she said that was really interesting, because so many of us are really working hard to learn these technologies, but she said if there was one thing that I would take away and offer is that we have the planet and we have been moving too fast. We have been trying to do too much. And Patricia, remember when she said, slow the fuck down?
Yeah.
She said, that's what you really need to do, is just to slow the fuck down, take this pause as a pause that actually generates rather than is frustrating.
Yeah.
Pause to really dig deeper and think about the meaning of what you do. It was a very, you know, she's brilliant. It was a very, very interesting conversation. And you can, I think they're archived, everybody. And
in the midst of our conversation, I have successfully found the direct link to the YouTube via HowlRound to the Anne Bogart talk. So if you would all like to receive the brilliance and provocation from some of our folks in the field, you know what I love is that you know, the productiveness is not in us agreeing. The productiveness is in us surfacing and engaging. So it's really cool that I'm not going to agree with everything Anne said. And Anne shared things that had great worth and had great depth and were, yeah. So yay, but also I can't wait to watch it and be like, I disagree, Anne. Speaking of that, in our notes, I have also posted my response to Joe Hodge. So if you would like to experience Claudia being like, this is what I think of what you just said, Joe Hodge, that's on there. I also dropped a link to the Creating Futures project, which was also, just shout out to HowlRound. HowlRound is in the center of like the coolest, most exciting conversation in the country, I think. So this was another conversation that took place on HowlRound, and it was creating new ethics and new equity for dance and performing artists. They've done a lot of thinking. They've put a lot of those ideas down on paper. Again, it's not useful for us to think that things have to be perfect and perfectly aligned with what we think needs to be in the world. What's useful is to have things that are provoking moments of idea and engagement. And I'm deeply excited about all the work that they are doing. So heavily recommend you engage with that. It's in the notes. I cut you off, Patricia. Did you have any final things to reflect on or share before we go back to the rest of our Memorial Days?
I'm an over talker, but it was maybe the 5th occasion that I've been in an international platform conversation where people have said digital theater is not real theater. Mm-hmm. And I think that the prejudices around that are being met here. And Peter Koh's work that you brought to us was a great example of it. And I think we got to acknowledge the difficulty of what we're all trying to do, whether we actually do it or whether we lean into the pause.
Yeah. Yes to all of that. Well, speaking of leaning into the pause, have a beautiful rest of your day, whatever that holds, be it resting and relaxing and trying to take a day off. Is it honoring your ancestors? Is it just continuing the beautiful, productive, necessary work you're already doing to survive and make awesomeness in the world? I don't know what it is, but have fun doing it. As always, I'm going to hit stop on the record, but then my colleagues and I are going to lean back and probably spend 15 minutes doing some homework and like starting the Facebook event for the next group and that kind of stuff. You're totally invited to join us. We will be working and we're going to try and keep it to 15 minutes.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone take good care. Thanks.
All right.
I will jump in on your website, on the website conversation sometime whenever you want that to happen.
Well, you could give us some feedback now if you want. Like I said, we try to keep it to 15. We had such a good meeting yesterday, though. I feel like my next step is I start the Facebook event and that's it. So there's time to have a little chitty chattiness. This is also, I try to name specific time periods, not because I'm trying to police your time. It's because I recognize that I can slip into planning mode and then there is no time and I'm just in planning mode and 3 hours have passed and we've had such a good time planning things. So I do that for y'all. So I'm gonna hit stop on record now so we can start planning. All right, and I hit stop and I hit the stop